My name is Jolynn Dickey, and I was sitting alone in the pouring rain outside my sister's wedding venue, mascara streaming down my cheeks, while 200 guests celebrated inside without me. My bridesmaid dress, the one I'd spent 3 months saving for, was soaked through, clinging to my shivering body like a second skin of humiliation. The muddy ground had claimed my heels hours ago, leaving me barefoot on the cold concrete steps of the Riverside Manor, watching through rain-streaked windows as my sister Christeen danced her first dance as Mrs. Robert Lindsay. That's when he appeared. A tall stranger in an expensive charcoal suit materialized through the downpour, holding a large black umbrella. His dark hair was perfectly styled despite the storm, and his gray eyes held a mixture of concern and something else I couldn't quite identify. Without a word, he extended his hand toward me. "You shouldn't be out here alone," he said, his voice warm and commanding. "Come with me." I stared at his outstretched hand, water dripping from my fingertips. "I can't go inside. I'm not supposed to be in there." His eyebrows lifted in disbelief. "Says who?" "My sister. The bride." The words tasted bitter. Apparently, I'm the family's designated weather monitor. Something shifted in his expression, a flash of recognition, followed by what looked like anger. "Christopher Nelson," he said, still holding out his hand. "And I think there's been a serious misunderstanding." I had no idea who Christopher Nelson was, but when I took his hand and he led me toward the venue's main entrance, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: protection. The way he moved, the confidence in his stride, the respectful nods from the venue staff. This wasn't just any wedding guest. "Wait," I whispered, pulling back as we approached the doors. "I can't. Christeen specifically told me to stay outside during the ceremony. She said someone needed to monitor the weather situation and coordinate with vendors if anything went wrong." Christopher stopped walking and turned to face me fully. Rain continued to pound the awning above us, but his focus was entirely on me. "Let me understand this correctly. You're the bride's sister, and she assigned you to stand outside in a thunderstorm during her wedding." "It's complicated," I said, wrapping my arms around myself. "Family dynamics, you know." "No, I don't know." His voice carried an edge now. "But I'm about to find out." He pulled out his phone and made a quick call. "Yes, this is Christopher Nelson. I need to speak with whoever's in charge of the Lindsay Wood wedding immediately." A pause. "Tell them the venue owner needs to discuss some urgent concerns about guest safety." My heart stopped. "Venue owner? You own this place?" I whispered. He nodded, still holding the phone. "Among other things. And what I'm seeing tonight is completely unacceptable." Before I could process this revelation, a frazzled wedding coordinator appeared at the entrance, practically tripping over herself to reach us. "Mr. Nelson, I'm so sorry. I had no idea you were here tonight. Is everything all right?" "Actually, no. Can you explain to me why a member of the wedding party is standing outside in dangerous weather conditions?" The coordinator's eyes darted between Christopher and me, her face pale. I was told by the bride that Miss Dickey was handling outdoor coordination. She said it was a family arrangement." "A family arrangement?" Christopher's voice was deadly quiet. "To leave someone outside during a severe thunderstorm." "Sir, I can explain." "No need. We're going inside now. Please ensure Miss Dickey has everything she needs to be comfortable." As we walked through the ornate lobby, I caught glimpses of myself in the mirrors lining the walls. I looked like a drowned rat. Hair plastered to my head, makeup completely destroyed, dress clinging inappropriately. But Christopher didn't seem to notice or care about my appearance. He was focused on something else entirely. "There's something you should know," he said as we paused outside the reception hall. "Your sister's new husband works at Mercy General Hospital, correct?" I nodded, confused by the change in topic. "And she's completing her residency there?" "Yes, in pediatric surgery. She's incredibly talented." "Why?" Christopher's smile was sharp. "Because I sit on the board of the Nelson Foundation. We provide significant funding to Mercy General, about $12 million annually for their pediatric wing and research programs. The blood drained from my face. $12 million. That was more money than I could even comprehend, and somehow this man controlled it. I also, he continued, personally oversee grant renewals and funding decisions for medical programs throughout the state. My legs felt weak. Christopher, I don't understand what you're telling me. I'm telling you that your sister just made a very expensive mistake. Through the reception hall doors, I could see Christeen laughing with her new husband, surrounded by family and friends. My mother, Barbara Sears, was holding court at the head table, regaling guests with stories about her successful daughter. My father was nowhere to be seen, typical for him to disappear when family tensions ran high. But first, Christopher said, let's get you dried off and properly introduced to some people. I can't go in there looking like this. You're going in there exactly as you are. Sometimes people need to see the consequences of their actions. As he reached for the door handle, I grabbed his arm. Wait, before we do this, I need to know, why are you helping me? You don't even know me. Christopher paused, his hand still on the door. Because 20 minutes ago, I watched a woman sit alone in a storm while her family celebrated inside. Because I've seen enough cruelty disguised as family tradition to last a lifetime. And because something tells me there's a lot more to this story than weather coordination. He was right. There was so much more. When I walk through these doors with you, he said quietly, everything changes. Your sister's perfect day, her carefully constructed image, her future plans, all of it becomes very complicated. Are you ready for that? I thought about the years of being invisible, of being the backup daughter, of standing in Christeen's shadow while she collected accolades and praise. I thought about tonight, abandoned in a storm while my family celebrated without me. Yes, I whispered, I'm ready. But I had no idea what Christopher Nelson was about to unleash or how completely it would transform not just that night, but the rest of my life. As the reception hall doors opened and warm light spilled out around us, I heard my sister's laughter falter. She'd spotted us. More specifically, she'd spotted him. And from the look of absolute terror that crossed her face, I realized Christeen knew exactly who Christopher Nelson was. But let me tell you how I ended up abandoned in a storm while my sister danced at her dream wedding. Because this story starts 3 months earlier, with a phone call that should have been the happiest moment of my life, but instead became the beginning of the most painful and ultimately liberating experience I'd ever endured. If this story moves you, or if you've ever felt invisible in your own family, please like this video and subscribe to my channel. Your support means everything, and trust me, this story gets so much more intense. 3 months earlier, I was sitting at my mother's dining room table, genuinely excited for the first time in years. Christeen had called a family dinner with big news, and for once, I thought maybe we could share a moment of pure joy together. I'd even brought her favorite dessert, homemade tiramisu that had taken me 4 hours to perfect. Robert proposed, Christeen announced, practically glowing as she extended her left hand to show off a stunning 2-carat diamond ring. We're getting married in June. I jumped up immediately, my heart swelling with genuine happiness for my sister. Oh my God, Christeen, this is incredible. I'm so happy for you. I rushed around the table to hug her, already imagining dress shopping trips and late-night wedding planning sessions, finally having something to bond over. But my mother, Barbara, barely glanced at me as she pulled Christeen into her arms. Darling, this is perfect timing, right after you finish your residency. Robert's family will be so impressed with your credentials. Mom, did you see the ring? I said, still beaming. It's gorgeous. Christeen, tell us everything. How did he propose? Where are you thinking of having the wedding? Christeen's smile faltered slightly as she looked at me. Well, we're thinking somewhere elegant, sophisticated. Robert's family has very high standards. I can help with planning, I offered eagerly. I've been to so many weddings through my work at the community center. I know great vendors, and I'm really good at organizing. That's sweet, Jolynn, my mother interrupted. But this is going to be a very upscale affair. Christeen will need professional help. The familiar sting hit my chest, but I pushed through it. I understand it's important. I just want to help however I can. This is so exciting. Christeen exchanged a look with our mother that I pretended not to notice. We'll see. There's a lot to figure out first. That should have been my warning. You see, I'd been the backup daughter my entire life. While Christeen excelled in advanced placement classes, I struggled with learning disabilities that weren't diagnosed until high school. While she got into medical school, I chose social work, a decision that prompted my mother to ask, "But what will you do for money, dear?" The pattern was always the same. Christeen's achievements were celebrated with elaborate dinners and social media posts. Mine were acknowledged with polite smiles and quick subject changes. When Christeen graduated medical school, my mother threw a party for 50 people. When I graduated with my master's in social work, we had cake at home. Store-bought cake because my mother was too busy to plan anything special. But the worst example happened 2 years ago. My college graduation was scheduled for the same weekend that Christeen received her acceptance letter to her pediatric surgery residency program. I'd worked 3 jobs to put myself through school, maintaining a 3.8 GPA while volunteering at homeless shelters and crisis centers. I was proud of what I'd accomplished. The morning of my graduation, I woke up to find my mother on the phone with relatives, crying happy tears. Christeen got into the residency program at Mercy General. Can you believe it? My daughter is going to be a pediatric surgeon. When I came downstairs in my cap and gown, she barely looked up. Oh, Jolynn, you look nice. We need to leave soon. I want to stop by Christeen's apartment to celebrate before your little ceremony. My little ceremony. 4 years of sacrifice and hard work reduced to a little ceremony. We spent an hour at Christeen's apartment, where my mother gushed over the residency acceptance letter and called more relatives to share the news. By the time we got to my graduation, we were late, and I walked across the stage to receive my diploma while my mother was still on the phone, telling someone about Christeen's achievement. So when Christeen got engaged, I was determined things would be different. This was my chance to be the supportive sister, to be included, to finally matter in a family celebration. I was so naive. The first text came a week after the engagement dinner. Christeen. Hey, so I've been thinking about the wedding planning. I really need someone organized to handle logistics. Me? Yes, I'm so excited to help. I have tons of ideas already. When do you want to start looking at venues? Christeen. Actually, Mom and I already have appointments at a few places, but I was thinking you could handle more of the practical elements. Me. What do you mean by practical elements? Christeen. You know, coordinating with vendors, managing timelines, making sure everything runs smoothly on the day. I was thrilled. It sounded like she was asking me to be her wedding coordinator, which felt like a huge responsibility and honor. Me. I would love that. This is going to be so much fun. We should meet this weekend to go over everything. Christeen. Great. I'll send you a list of what I need handled. The list arrived the next day, and my excitement quickly turned to confusion, then hurt, then anger. Christeen's wedding task list for Jolynn. Monitor weather conditions leading up to and during the event. Coordinate with outdoor vendors, tent company, landscaping, etc. Manage any weather-related contingencies. Ensure outdoor areas remain presentable throughout the event. Handle any issues that arise outside the main venue. I stared at my phone, reading the list 3 times before the reality sank in. She wasn't asking me to be her wedding coordinator. She was asking me to be her outdoor maintenance crew. Me. Christeen, this list is all outdoor stuff. What about the actual wedding planning? Flowers, music, menu tasting? Christeen. Mom and I have that covered, but the outdoor coordination is really important. I need someone I can trust to handle the outdoor elements. You understand weather, right? Me. You mean you want me to stand outside during your wedding? Christeen, not the whole time. Just to make sure everything outside is perfect. It's a really important job. Me, but I'm your sister. I want to be part of the actual celebration, not working outside while everyone else is inside. Christeen, Jolynn, this is my wedding day. I need to know that someone responsible is handling the details so I can focus on what's important. I thought you'd want to help. There it was, the guilt trip that always worked. If I complained, I was being selfish on her special day. If I refused, I was letting the family down. Me, of course I want to help. I just thought I'd be more involved in the planning process. Christeen, there's still time for that. Let's just see how the outdoor coordination goes first. But there was no more involvement. Over the next 2 months, I watched from the sidelines as my mother and Christeen planned every detail of the wedding. They went dress shopping without me. They attended cake tastings without me. They chose flowers, music, and decorations without me. When I asked about being included, I got variations of the same response. We've got it handled, or we don't want to overwhelm you with too many responsibilities. Meanwhile, my task list grew longer and more specific. Arrive at venue at 6 a.m. to check weather conditions. Coordinate with tent company for setup. Monitor outdoor temperature and humidity levels. Ensure backup plans are ready for any weather changes. Remain available throughout the ceremony for outdoor issues. Manage outdoor vendor schedules. I tried talking to my mother about it, hoping she'd see how hurtful this was. Mom, I feel like I'm being excluded from Christeen's wedding planning. All I'm doing is weather monitoring. Jolynn, your sister is under enormous stress. She's finishing her residency, planning a wedding, and trying to impress Robert's family. The last thing she needs is more complications. But I'm not a complication. I'm her sister. I want to help with the real planning. You are helping. The outdoor coordination is very important. What if it rains? What if there are problems with the tent? Christeen needs to know someone reliable is handling those details. But why can't I do that and also be involved in other aspects? My mother sighed. That familiar sound that meant I was being difficult. Because Christeen has very specific ideas about her wedding, and she's chosen people who understand her vision to help with the important decisions. People who understand her vision, not her sister, not family, people. The final blow came 2 weeks before the wedding, when I discovered through social media that Christeen had chosen 5 bridesmaids, college friends, medical school classmates, and our cousin Gail Miller, who she'd barely spoken to in 3 years. But not me. When I confronted her about it, her response was devastating in its casual cruelty. Jolynn, I needed bridesmaids who could handle the responsibilities. You're already doing the outdoor coordination, which is honestly more important than standing around looking pretty. More important than being your sister. That's not what I meant. You're being dramatic. But I knew exactly what she meant. I wasn't good enough to stand beside her on her special day. I wasn't worthy of being in the photos that would hang in her home for decades. I was good enough to work outside in whatever weather conditions arose, but not good enough to be publicly acknowledged as her family. The night before the wedding, as I packed my weather monitoring supplies and emergency contact lists, I made a decision. I would do exactly what Christeen asked of me. I would handle the outdoor coordination with perfect professionalism. I would monitor the weather, coordinate with vendors, and solve any problems that arose. But I was done pretending this was about helping family. This was about being useful enough to keep around, but not important enough to include. I had no idea that standing outside in that storm would be the moment everything changed. That a stranger's kindness would expose the cruelty I'd been accepting as normal for so long. And I definitely had no idea that Christopher Nelson would turn out to be the one person who could make my sister's perfect day very, very complicated. The morning of Christeen's wedding, I arrived at Riverside Manor at 6 a.m. sharp, just as instructed. The sky was already gray and threatening, with heavy clouds rolling in from the west. I checked the weather forecast obsessively. There was a 70% chance of thunderstorms starting around 4 p.m., right when the ceremony was scheduled to begin. I found the wedding coordinator, a frazzled woman named Susan, setting up in the bridal suite. "Oh, good, you're here," she said without looking up. "The bride wants to see you immediately." I knocked on the bridal suite door, expecting to find Christeen getting ready with her bridesmaids, maybe needing a last-minute weather update or reassurance about the backup plans we discussed. Instead, I found chaos. 5 women in matching silk robes were having their hair and makeup done, while a photographer captured every moment. Christeen sat in the center like a queen holding court, already looking radiant even without her dress. "Jolynn!" she called out when she saw me. "Perfect timing. I need you to look at this." She handed me a laminated timeline, the official wedding day schedule. I scanned the document, looking for my name, expecting to see Jolynn Outdoor Coordination listed alongside the other wedding party activities. Instead, I found something that made my stomach drop. My name had been crossed out, not just moved or reassigned, literally crossed out with black marker from every single indoor activity. Wedding timeline, final version, 10:00 a.m., bridal party hair and makeup, including Jolynn, 12:00 p.m., bridal party lunch, including Jolynn, 2:00 p.m., bridal party photos, including Jolynn, 3:30 p.m., bridal party getting dressed, including Jolynn, 4 p.m., ceremony, Jolynn, outdoor weather monitoring, 5 p.m., cocktail hour, Jolynn, outdoor vendor coordination, 6:30 p.m., reception, Jolynn, outdoor maintenance as needed. "Christeen," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "My name is crossed out of everything except standing outside." "I know, I'm sorry about that, but we realize the outdoor coordination is going to be really intensive today with this weather. I need you focused entirely on that." One of the bridesmaids, a blonde woman I didn't recognize, looked up from her manicure. "Is this the sister you were telling us about? The one who's handling the weather stuff?" "Yes, this is Jolynn," Christeen said, not meeting my eyes. "She's our outdoor specialist." Outdoor specialist. Like I was hired help instead of family. "But I bought a bridesmaid dress," I said, hating how pathetic I sounded. "I thought I'd at least be in some of the photos." "You can still wear the dress. It'll be perfect for outdoor coordination. Very professional looking." The photographer, a middle-aged man with kind eyes, looked uncomfortable. "Ma'am, if you'd like some family photos before the ceremony, I could—" "That won't be necessary," Christeen cut him off. "We're sticking to the timeline. Jolynn, you should probably get started on your weather monitoring. The tent company will be here soon." I stood there for a moment, holding the timeline with my crossed-out name, surrounded by women who were living my sister's perfect morning while I was being dismissed like an employee who'd overstayed her welcome. "Okay," I said quietly. "I'll go handle the outdoor coordination." As I turned to leave, I heard one of the bridesmaids whisper, "I thought you said she was in social work. Why is she doing manual labor?" Christeen's response followed me out the door. "She volunteered. She's really good with practical stuff." I spent the next 6 hours doing exactly what I'd been assigned. I coordinated with the tent company as they set up the backup reception area. I checked and double-checked the weather radar. I ensured all outdoor vendors had covered areas for their equipment. I was professional, thorough, and completely invisible to my own family. At 3:30, the storm clouds opened up. It started as a light drizzle, but within minutes it became a steady downpour. I radioed the wedding coordinator immediately. "Susan, we need to move the ceremony inside. The rain is getting worse, and the forecast shows it continuing for at least 2 hours." "I'll check with the bride," she responded. 5 minutes later, she came back with Christeen's decision. The bride wants to proceed with the outdoor ceremony as planned. She says the photos will be more romantic with a little rain. A little rain. I was standing in what was rapidly becoming a downpour, and she called it a little rain. "Susan, this isn't safe. The ground is getting muddy, and guests are going to be soaked." The bride was very clear. The ceremony stays outside. She needs you to make sure everything runs smoothly despite the weather. So I did. I set up additional umbrellas for the officiant. I placed towels along the aisle to prevent slipping. I coordinated with ushers to help elderly guests navigate the increasingly treacherous conditions. And through it all, I got progressively more soaked. By 4 p.m., when guests began arriving, I looked like I'd been swimming fully clothed. My carefully styled hair was plastered to my head. My makeup had long since washed away. My bridesmaid dress, the one I'd saved 3 months to buy, was clinging to my body inappropriately, and my shoes were caked with mud. But the ceremony had to go on. I watched from my assigned position at the back of the seating area as 200 guests huddled under umbrellas, many of them clearly miserable in the downpour. I watched my mother walk down the aisle in her elegant mother-of-the-bride dress, protected by a large umbrella held by an usher. I watched the bridesmaids process in their sage green dresses, each one accompanied by a groomsman with an umbrella. And then I watched Christeen make her grand entrance, radiant and dry under a custom white umbrella that matched her dress perfectly. The ceremony proceeded exactly as planned. The officiant spoke about love conquering all obstacles. Robert and Christeen exchanged vows about weathering life's storms together. They kissed to enthusiastic applause from guests who were probably just relieved the outdoor portion was over. As everyone moved toward the reception hall, I remained outside, coordinating the breakdown of ceremony equipment and ensuring the outdoor areas were secure for the evening. I was alone, soaked, shivering, and completely forgotten. That's when I heard footsteps behind me. "Excuse me, but why is the bride's sister standing alone in a thunderstorm?" I turned to find a tall man in an expensive suit approaching with a large black umbrella. Despite the weather, he looked perfectly put together, not a hair out of place, his charcoal gray suit somehow still crisp and dry. "Because apparently I'm the family's designated weather girl," I said, too exhausted and defeated to care how bitter I sounded. He studied my face for a moment, and I saw something shift in his expression. "I'm Christopher Nelson, and you are?" "Jolynn Dickey, the bride's sister and today's outdoor coordinator, weather monitor, and general problem solver." "The bride's sister," he repeated slowly. "And they have you standing outside in dangerous weather conditions while everyone else celebrates inside?" "It's complicated family dynamics," I said, wrapping my arms around myself as another wave of cold rain hit us. Christopher's jaw tightened. "No, it's not complicated, it's cruel." He pulled out his phone and made a quick call. "Yes, this is Christopher Nelson. I need to speak with whoever's in charge of the Lindsay Wood wedding immediately." A pause. "Tell them the venue owner needs to discuss some urgent concerns about guest safety." My heart stopped. "You own this place?" "Among other things," he said grimly, "and what I'm witnessing tonight is completely unacceptable." Before I could process this revelation, the wedding coordinator appeared, practically running through the rain to reach us. "Mr. Nelson, I'm so sorry. I had no idea you were here tonight. Is everything all right?" "Actually, no. Can you explain to me why a member of the wedding party is standing outside in dangerous weather conditions while the reception is in full swing inside?" Susan's face went pale. The bride specifically requested that Miss Dickey handle outdoor coordination throughout the event. She said it was a family arrangement." "A family arrangement to leave someone outside during a severe thunderstorm." "Sir, I was just following the bride's instructions." "The bride's instructions don't supersede basic human decency or safety protocols. We're going inside, now." As we walked toward the venue entrance, Christopher continued talking, and what he said next made my blood run cold. "Your sister's new husband works at Mercy General Hospital, correct?" I nodded, confused by the change in topic. "And she's completing her residency there in pediatric surgery?" "Yes, why?" Christopher's smile was sharp and dangerous. Because I sit on the board of the Nelson Foundation. We provide significant funding to Mercy General, about $12 million annually for their pediatric wing, research programs, and residency positions. $12 million. The number hit me like a physical blow. I also personally oversee grant renewals and funding decisions for medical programs throughout the state. Your sister's residency program, her future fellowship opportunities, even her husband's department. They all depend on continued foundation support. I stopped walking, rain still pouring down around us. Christopher, what are you saying? I'm saying that your sister just made a very expensive mistake. Because the Nelson Foundation has very strict policies about supporting institutions whose staff demonstrate poor judgment, lack of character, or cruelty toward vulnerable individuals. Through the reception hall windows, I could see Christeen laughing with her new husband, surrounded by family and friends who had no idea that the man standing beside me in the rain held her entire career in his hands. What Christopher told me next about my sister's hospital funding made my blood run cold. The Nelson Foundation doesn't just fund medical programs, Christopher continued as we stood under the venue's covered entrance, rain still pounding the ground around us. We evaluate the character and community impact of everyone associated with our grant recipients. Your sister's behavior tonight raises serious questions about her judgment and values. He pulled out his wallet and handed me a business card. The elegant black cardstock was embossed with gold lettering. Christopher Nelson, Executive Director, the Nelson Foundation, Annual Giving, $50 million transforming communities through strategic philanthropy. $50 million. I stared at the card, trying to comprehend that level of wealth and influence. This wasn't just some wealthy wedding guest. This was a man who controlled more money than most people would see in multiple lifetimes. I don't understand, I said, my voice barely audible over the storm. Why are you telling me this? What does any of this have to do with me standing in the rain? Christopher's expression softened slightly. Because in my experience, the way people treat those they perceive as powerless reveals their true character. And what I've witnessed tonight tells me everything I need to know about your sister's character. But she's brilliant. I found myself defending her despite everything. She's going to be an incredible pediatric surgeon. She's worked so hard. I'm sure she has. But technical skill without compassion is dangerous in medicine. And someone who would leave their own sister outside in a thunderstorm while they celebrate inside... He shook his head. That's not someone I want representing programs my foundation supports. A wedding coordinator appeared at the entrance, looking frazzled. Mr. Nelson, the bride is asking if everything is all right. She saw you speaking with the outdoor coordinator. Tell the bride I'll be inside shortly to discuss some foundation matters with her, Christopher said coolly. And please arrange for Miss Dickey to have access to a private room where she can dry off and change if needed. Of course, sir. Right away. As the coordinator hurried off, Christopher turned back to me. Before we go inside, I need to ask you something. What exactly do you do in your social work position? I was surprised by the question. I work at the Downtown Community Center. I coordinate services for homeless individuals and families, housing assistance, job training, mental health resources, substance abuse programs. I also run support groups and help people navigate social services systems. How long have you been doing this work? 5 years. I started as a volunteer in college and worked my way up to program coordinator. Christopher's eyes sharpened with interest. What's your success rate with housing placements? 87% of our clients secure stable housing within 6 months. But that's not the whole story. We also track long-term stability, employment outcomes, family reunification rates, and mental health improvements. You track all of that yourself. I developed the tracking system. Most community centers don't have comprehensive outcome measurement, but I believe you can improve what you don't measure. I also created partnerships with local employers, landlords, and healthcare providers to create a more integrated support network. Christopher was quiet for a moment, studying me with an intensity that made me self-conscious about my bedraggled appearance. Jolynn, do you realize what you just described? Basic program evaluation? No, you described sophisticated community impact assessment and strategic partnership development. You're doing work that most nonprofit executives with decades of experience struggle to implement effectively. I felt heat rise in my cheeks. It's just common sense. If you want to help people, you have to understand what actually works. Exactly. Christopher's smile was genuine now, not the sharp, dangerous expression he'd worn when discussing my sister. Tell me about your biggest challenge in the work. Funding, obviously. We're always operating on shoestring budgets, which means we can't provide comprehensive services. We'll get someone housed, but then they can't afford job training. Or they complete job training but can't afford professional clothes for interviews. Everything is connected, but funding sources are all siloed. What would you do if money wasn't a constraint? The question caught me off guard. No one had ever asked me that before. I'd create a holistic program, wraparound services that address housing, employment, healthcare, childcare, transportation, and mental health simultaneously. I'd also focus on prevention, catching families before they become homeless rather than just responding to crisis. How much would something like that cost annually? I did quick mental calculations. For a comprehensive program serving 500 families, probably around $2 million per year. But the long-term savings would be enormous. Reduced emergency room visits, decreased involvement with child protective services, lower incarceration rates, increased tax revenue from stable employment. Christopher nodded slowly. You've thought about this extensively. I think about it every day. I see what's possible, but I'm limited by resources and bureaucracy. What if I told you that the Nelson Foundation is looking for someone to lead a new community impact initiative? Someone who understands both the grassroots reality and the systemic changes needed to create lasting transformation? My heart stopped. What do you mean? I mean, we're launching a $50 million community development program over the next 5 years. We need someone who can design and implement comprehensive interventions, measure outcomes, and scale successful models across multiple cities. $50 million for community development. It was more money than I'd ever dreamed of having access to for the work I was passionate about. Christopher, I don't have the credentials for that kind of position. I don't have an MBA or nonprofit management experience at that level. You have something better. You have direct experience, proven results, and innovative thinking. Most importantly, you understand that real change happens at the community level, not in boardrooms. I stared at him, rain still dripping from my hair, wearing a ruined bridesmaid dress, and this man was offering me the opportunity of a lifetime. Why? I asked. Why would you offer this to someone you just met? Because I've spent the last 10 minutes learning more about effective community intervention strategies from you than I have from dozens of consultants with impressive degrees and no real-world experience. Because you're passionate about the work, not just the prestige, and because... He paused, looking toward the reception hall where warm light spilled out into the storm. Because I believe in recognizing talent wherever I find it, especially when others have overlooked it. Your insights on community health are remarkable, he continued. Have you considered working in philanthropic strategy? You mean there are people who actually value what I do? The words came out more vulnerable than I intended. Jolynn, what you do is exactly what the world needs more of. The question is whether you're ready to do it on a much larger scale. I thought about my tiny office at the community center, my constant battles for funding, my programs that help dozens of people, when I knew I could help thousands with the right resources. I would need to give notice at my current job, and I'd want to ensure my current clients have continuity of services. Christopher's smile widened. Of course. We'd want you to transition responsibly. The position wouldn't start for 3 months anyway. We're still finalizing the program structure. He pulled out another business card and wrote something on the back. This is my direct number. Call me Monday and we'll set up a formal meeting to discuss the details. I took the card with shaking hands. Christopher, I don't know what to say. Say you'll consider it. Say you'll let me show you what's possible when someone with your vision has access to real resources. Through the reception hall windows, I could see my family celebrating. My mother was giving a speech, probably about Christeen's accomplishments and bright future. My sister was glowing in her wedding dress, surrounded by people who adored her. And here I was, standing in the rain in a ruined dress, being offered the professional opportunity of my dreams by a man who controlled more money than my family could imagine. There's something you should know, I said quietly. If I take this position, it's going to complicate things with my sister. If your foundation has influence over her residency program, Jolynn, let me be clear about something. Your sister's career prospects have nothing to do with whether you take this job. Her behavior tonight has already raised concerns that I'll need to address with Mercy General's administration. Your qualifications for this position are entirely separate from any family dynamics. But she'll think whatever she chooses to think. The question is, are you going to let her limitations define your opportunities? I looked down at the business card in my hands, then back at Christopher's confident, encouraging expression. No, I said, surprised by the strength in my own voice. I'm not. Good. Now, shall we go inside? I think it's time I properly introduced myself to your family. As we approached the reception hall doors, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Power. Not power over others, but power over my own life, my own future, my own worth. But when Christopher walked into that reception and introduced himself, the look on Christeen's face told me she knew exactly who he was. Drop a comment below. Have you ever had someone finally recognize your worth when your family couldn't? I want to hear your stories. The reception hall fell into a subtle hush as Christopher and I entered together. My mother spotted us first, her expression shifting from polite social smile to something approaching panic. She knew who he was. Jolynn! Christeen's voice cut through the chatter as she approached, her wedding dress rustling with each hurried step. Her smile was bright and forced. There you are. I was wondering where you'd gone. Her eyes darted to Christopher. And you must be Christopher Nelson, he said, extending his hand. Congratulations on your wedding. I was just having a fascinating conversation with your sister about her work in community health initiatives. I watched the color drain from Christeen's face. Christopher Nelson of the Nelson Foundation. That's right. Jolynn has been telling me about her innovative approaches to homelessness prevention and wraparound services. Quite impressive work. Oh, that's wonderful, Christeen stammered. Jolynn does such important work at the community center. Important enough that I've offered her a position leading our new $50 million community impact initiative, Christopher said casually. The words hit nearby guests like a shockwave. Conversation stopped entirely. My mother's wine glass froze halfway to her lips. Robert's parents suddenly turned to stare. $50 million? My mother whispered. The Nelson Foundation is launching a comprehensive community development program, Christopher explained to the growing circle of listeners. Jolynn's expertise in outcome measurement and integrated service delivery makes her the ideal candidate to lead the initiative. I felt every eye in the room on me. The sister who'd been standing outside in the rain an hour ago, now being publicly praised by one of the most powerful philanthropists in the state. That's incredible, Jolynn, Robert said, genuinely impressed for the first time all day. I had no idea you were involved in such high-level work. Most people don't, I said quietly, my eyes meeting Christeen's panicked gaze. As the crowd began to disperse, Christeen grabbed my arm. I need to speak with you, privately. She practically dragged me toward a quiet corner, her grip tight enough to leave marks. Once we were out of earshot, her composed facade crumbled entirely. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" she hissed. "I'm sorry, what?" "Don't play dumb with me, Jolynn. Christopher Nelson controls the funding for my residency program, for Robert's department, for half the hospital's operations." "I'm aware of that now." "And you're seriously considering working for him? After everything our family has been through to get me to this point?" I stared at her, genuinely confused. "What does your career have to do with my job opportunities? You can't seriously be considering working with him. Think about family loyalty." The words hit me like a physical blow. After everything, after being excluded, dismissed, and literally left outside in a storm, she was talking to me about family loyalty. "Family loyalty?" I repeated, my voice rising slightly. "You made me stand in a storm during your wedding. Where was loyalty then?" "That's different. That was about logistics." "No, it wasn't. It was about you being ashamed of me, about not wanting me in your photos or at your table or anywhere visible during your perfect day." I pulled out my phone and showed her the photo I'd taken of the timeline that morning, the one with my name systematically crossed out in black marker. I also discreetly started recording our conversation, something I'd learned to do during my social work training for protection in volatile situations. "I have documentation of everything, Christine. Every text where you dismissed my offers to help, every conversation where you reduced me to outdoor maintenance, every moment where you treated me like hired help instead of your sister." Her eyes widened. "You're recording me? At my own wedding? I'm protecting myself, something I should have started doing years ago." "Jolynn, please. You don't understand the pressure I'm under. Robert's family, the hospital, my career. I understand perfectly. I understand that your pressure somehow always becomes my problem, that your success requires my invisibility, that your comfort depends on my sacrifice." Several wedding guests had begun to notice our heated conversation. My mother approached, her face tight with concern, not for me, but for the scene we were creating. "Girls, what's going on here?" Barbara asked in her sweetest public voice. "Mom, Jolynn is threatening to take a job that could jeopardize my entire career," Christeen said, tears forming in her eyes. "That's not what's happening," I said firmly. "I'm considering a job offer based on my qualifications and experience. The fact that it makes Christeen uncomfortable is not my problem." "But surely you can see how this looks," my mother said, "after everything Christeen has worked for." "After everything I've worked for, too," I interrupted. "After 5 years of building programs, helping families, creating real change in my community. After tonight, when I stood outside in a thunderstorm because my own family was too embarrassed to include me in their celebration." "That's not fair," Christeen protested. "You volunteered for the outdoor coordination." "I volunteered to help with your wedding. You assigned me to stand outside because you didn't want me visible during your special day." "There's a difference." The conversation had drawn a small crowd now. Robert's parents, some of the bridesmaids, even Christopher had moved closer, though he remained respectfully distant. "Jolynn, please," Christeen's voice broke. "I'm begging you. Don't do this to me. I'm not doing anything to you. I'm finally doing something for me. But if you take this job, if you have influence over the foundation's decisions about hospital funding, then maybe you should have thought about that before you treated me like I was disposable." The words hung in the air between us, heavy with years of accumulated hurt and resentment. I could see the exact moment when Christeen realized that her actions had consequences. "I never meant," she started. "Yes, you did. You meant every dismissal, every exclusion. Every moment you made me feel like I wasn't good enough to be your sister. And now you're panicking because someone finally sees value in what I do, and that threatens the perfect life you've built on my invisibility." I looked around at the faces watching us, family members, friends, wedding guests getting a front row seat to years of family dysfunction finally exploding into the open. "I'm done," I said quietly. "I'm done needing your approval. I'm done accepting scraps of attention and calling it love. I'm done being the sister you're ashamed of." I turned to walk away, but Christeen grabbed my arm again. "Jolynn, wait. We can work this out. We can find a solution that works for everyone." I looked down at her hand on my arm, then back up at her desperate face. "The solution is simple, Christeen. Treat people with respect. And they won't have reasons to hurt you later. But it's too late for that now." I gently removed her hand from my arm and walked back toward Christopher, who was waiting with quiet support. "Ready to leave?" he asked softly. "More than ready." As we headed toward the exit, I heard my mother calling my name, but I didn't turn around. For the first time in my life, I was walking away from my family's drama instead of trying to fix it, and it felt like freedom. 3 months later, I stood at the podium of the grand ballroom at the Marriott downtown, looking out at an audience of 300 healthcare professionals, community leaders, and philanthropists gathered for the annual Public Health Innovation Conference. In the third row, I could see Christeen sitting with a group from Mercy General Hospital, her face carefully neutral as she watched her sister, the one she'd left outside in the rain, prepare to deliver the keynote address. "Good morning," I began, my voice steady and confident. "My name is Jolynn Dickey, and I'm the Director of Community Impact Initiatives for the Nelson Foundation. Today I want to talk to you about what happens when we stop treating symptoms and start addressing root causes." The applause was warm and genuine. 6 months ago, I would never have imagined commanding this audience's attention and respect. 3 months ago, I was working at a small community center with limited resources. Today, I'm here to announce the launch of the Integrated Community Wellness Program, a $50 million initiative that will transform how we approach homelessness, healthcare access, and economic stability in our region. I clicked to my first slide, showing the comprehensive program model I'd developed. This isn't charity. This is investment. Investment in prevention rather than crisis response. Investment in dignity rather than dependency. As I outlined the program's components, wraparound housing services, job training partnerships, healthcare navigation, childcare support, and mental health resources, I could see heads nodding throughout the audience. "Our pilot program launched 6 weeks ago in the Riverside District," I continued. "We're already seeing remarkable results. 93% of participating families have maintained stable housing. 78% of adults have enrolled in job training or secured employment. Emergency room visits among participants have decreased by 62%. The numbers were even better than I'd hoped. More importantly, behind each statistic was a family whose life had been transformed. But the real measure of success isn't in our statistics," I said, clicking to a slide showing photos of program participants. "It's in stories like Maria Santos, who went from living in her car with 2 young children to completing a certified nursing assistant program and securing full-time employment with benefits." The audience was completely engaged now. I could feel their energy, their excitement about what was possible when resources were deployed strategically. "The Nelson Foundation's investment represents more than funding," I continued. "It represents a fundamental shift in how we think about community development. We're not just writing checks. We're building systems that create lasting change." As I concluded my presentation, the applause was thunderous. People rose to their feet, and I felt a surge of pride that had nothing to do with anyone else's validation. This was my work, my vision, my contribution to the world. During the networking reception, I was surrounded by colleagues eager to learn more about the program, to explore partnerships, to understand how they could implement similar approaches in their own communities. "Jolynn!" Dr. Patricia Williams, the conference organizer, approached with a beaming smile. "That was absolutely brilliant. I've already had 6 hospital systems ask about replicating your model. I hope you know that presentation is going to be the talk of the healthcare community for months. The local news wants to interview you, and I've had 3 universities ask about having you speak to their public health students." As if on cue, a reporter from Channel 7 News approached. "Ms. Dickey, I'm Sarah Chen from Channel 7. Could we get a few minutes for an interview about your program? 20 minutes later, I was being interviewed for the evening news about the innovative community health initiative I was leading. The irony wasn't lost on me. 6 months ago, my own family didn't think my work was worth mentioning, and now I was being featured on television as a community leader and innovator. The key insight, I told the reporter, is that homelessness, healthcare access, and economic instability are interconnected problems that require interconnected solutions. You can't address one without addressing the others. And this $50 million investment from the Nelson Foundation, how will that change the landscape of social services in our region? It's going to demonstrate that prevention is not only more humane than crisis response, it's more cost-effective. When we invest in keeping families stable, we save money on emergency services, child welfare interventions, and incarceration. Everyone benefits. That evening, I watched myself on the news from my new apartment, a beautiful one-bedroom place downtown that I could actually afford on my foundation salary. My phone had been buzzing all day with congratulatory messages from colleagues, former clients, and friends who had seen the coverage. But the message that surprised me most came from my mother. "Barbara, saw you on the news tonight. I had no idea your work was so important." I stared at the text for a long moment before responding. "Me. It always was. You just never bothered to look." "Barbara, can we talk? I think I owe you an apology." "Me. I'm open to that conversation, but it needs to be honest." "Barbara, I understand. I'm proud of you, Jolynn. I should have said that years ago." It was a start, not forgiveness, not a complete repair of our relationship, but acknowledgement. Recognition that I had value, that my work mattered, that I deserved respect. The next morning brought even more validation. The local newspaper had run a front-page story about the program with a large photo of me speaking at the conference and the headline, "Local Social Worker Leads Revolutionary Approach to Community Health." The article detailed my background, my innovative approaches to service delivery, and the Foundation's investment in scaling my model. It quoted Christopher extensively about why they had chosen me to lead the initiative. Jolynn Dickey represents the best of what's possible when passion meets expertise, he was quoted as saying. Her understanding of community needs, combined with her ability to design and implement effective interventions, makes her exactly the kind of leader our foundation seeks to support. But the quote that meant the most to me came from Maria Santos, one of our program participants. Ms. Dickey didn't just help me find housing, she helped me believe I deserved better. She saw potential in me when I couldn't see it in myself. That afternoon, my phone rang. Christeen's name appeared on the screen. "Hello, Christeen." "Jolynn, I saw the news coverage and the newspaper article. I wanted to congratulate you." "Thank you. I also wanted to apologize. For the wedding, for how I treated you, for not recognizing what you were accomplishing in your work." I was quiet for a moment, processing the words I'd waited years to hear. "I appreciate that, Christeen, but an apology doesn't undo the damage." I know I can't take back what happened, but I want you to know that I'm proud of you. What you're doing is incredible. It's the same work I was doing before, Christeen. The only difference is that now someone with power and money is paying attention to it. That's not true. You've grown. You've expanded your impact. I've had resources. That's the only difference. My vision, my skills, my dedication, those were always there. You just chose not to see them. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "You're right," she said finally. "I was so focused on my own path that I couldn't see the value in yours. That was my failure, not yours." "Yes, it was. Can we try to rebuild our relationship? I know I don't deserve it, but I'd like to try." I looked out the window of my office at the Nelson Foundation, watching people walk by on the busy street below. 6 months ago, I would have jumped at the chance to repair things with Christeen, would have been grateful for any acknowledgement from my family. Now, I felt something different. Not anger, not resentment, but a kind of peaceful detachment. Maybe, I said, but it would have to be a completely different relationship, one based on mutual respect, not on me accepting whatever scraps of attention you're willing to give. I understand. I'd like that too. We'll see, Christine. We'll see. After I hung up, I sat in my office for a few minutes, reflecting on how completely my life had changed. The scared, desperate woman who had stood in the rain at her sister's wedding was gone. In her place was someone who knew her own worth, who commanded respect, who was building something meaningful in the world. 1 year later, I stood in the lobby of the newly opened Riverside Community Wellness Center, watching families stream through the doors for our grand opening celebration. The building had been transformed from an abandoned warehouse into a beautiful space, housing all the integrated services I'd dreamed of. Housing assistance, job training, healthcare navigation, childcare, and mental health support under one roof. Jolynn! Maria Santos approached with her 2 children. Look at this place. I can't believe this is where it all started for us. Maria had become one of our program's greatest success stories, securing stable housing, completing nursing school, and now working at Mercy General, Christeen's hospital. Speaking of your sister, Maria said carefully, I heard she's been asking about volunteer opportunities here. I nodded. She reached out last month, said she wanted to contribute to community health initiatives. What did you tell her? That we have a rigorous application process for all volunteers, same standards for everyone. Christopher appeared beside me. The mayor's here. And there's a reporter from the Washington Post who wants to interview you about the national expansion. After interviews and tours, I found a quiet moment on the center's rooftop garden. My phone buzzed with texts. Barbara. Saw the news coverage. It's beautiful, honey. You should be so proud. Me. Thank you. It means a lot to hear you say that. Barbara. I've been thinking about how I failed to see what you were building. I want to do better. Dinner next week? Me. Yes, but I choose the restaurant this time. Barbara. Of course. Whatever you prefer. For 30 years, family gatherings had revolved around other people's preferences. Now I had a voice. Another text came from Christeen. Christine. Congratulations on the center opening. I saw the photos. It looks incredible. Me. Thank you. Christine. I meant what I said about wanting to volunteer. I know I have to earn the right to be part of what you're building. Me. The application is on our website. Same process as everyone else. Christine. Can we just go back to how things were before all this tension? Me. You mean when you treated me like I was invisible? No, we can't. Christine. That's not what I meant. Me. Christine. If you want to be part of my life, it has to be on equal terms. No more dismissing my work, no more treating me like the backup daughter. Those days are over. Christine. I understand. I'm trying to change. Me. We'll see. Christopher joined me on the rooftop. Penny, for your thoughts? Just reflecting on how different everything is. A year ago, I was standing in the rain, feeling powerless. Now you're running a national program changing thousands of lives. It's not just the program, it's who I've become. The person who accepted being treated as disposable. She's gone. She's evolved, Christopher said gently. The compassion that made you sacrifice for others drives your work now. You just learned to extend that compassion to yourself, too. There's something I've been meaning to tell you, Christopher continued. The board voted yesterday to make your position permanent and increase the program budget to $100 million over the next 5 years. $100 million. What mattered more was what it represented. Trust in my vision, confidence in my leadership. Stop giving me credit for your success, Christopher said. You built this. You earned this. You deserve this. I smiled, feeling the truth of his words. You're right. I did build this. My phone buzzed one more time. Unknown. Hi, Ms. Dickey. This is James Mitchell from your first pilot program. I graduated from college today. Thank you for believing in me when I couldn't believe in myself." I showed Christopher the message, tears pricking my eyes. "This is why you do the work," he said. He was right. Whatever the future held, family reconciliations or continued boundaries, program expansions or new challenges, I would face it as someone who knew her own worth. The scared, invisible woman abandoned in the rain was gone. In her place stood someone who had learned the most important lesson, that the best revenge isn't hurting those who hurt you, it's becoming exactly who you were meant to be, with or without their approval. If this story inspired you to set boundaries with toxic family members, share it with someone who needs to hear this message. Sometimes the people who are supposed to love us most are the ones who need to learn our worth the hard way.